Kevin, welcome.
Welcome. Well, I've got my pint glass here. If this is an emergency, bring me a pint and a Kevin J. Anderson novel. So I'm going to crack my local Pikes Peak Brewing, an Elephant Rock IPA, and pour
that. All righty.
Get just the right amount of bit of head on the top there.
Look at that. That is a professional pour. Now, while you're doing that, I have already opened, I could not resist, the Rush 50 from Henderson Brewing here in Ontario, and I've already started to pour it because I'm not as good as you. I had to pre-pour some of it so I wouldn't get too much of that foam. But Kevin, cheers. Good to we haven't had a beer this month yet together, so cheers.
I got to get used to this backwards camera here. So actually, before we sip, I want to kind of do a sad announcement and do a toast here, because we just learned this afternoon that Danny Peart, Neil Peart's brother, also died of glioblastoma brain cancer today. Yeah. So it's a sad day, and I've met. In fact, so Danny, we'll take a sip. A
sip for Danny. Yes. Okay.
So the very first thing that Neil and I ever wrote together was a story called Drum Beats, kind of a dark fantasy about a rock drummer bicycling through Africa, and he encounters some weird villages and Twilight Zone kind of stuff. And the main character in that Drum Beat story is named Danny for his brother. Who?
Oh, was that really? Is that why you guys named him Danny? Wow,
that's why it's Danny. So
wow, I never knew that.
It's on a somber note, but I wanted to recognize and toast to Danny Peart.
Yeah, here's to Danny. Yeah.
So we have lots of other stuff to talk about, and the evening with a drink and a friend. That's what we're doing here, and
yeah, for sure.
Mark and we have shared, and in fact, I'll back up a little bit. I'm wearing a Bubba Bash T-shirt that Mark and I both went to the Neil Peart Memorial Concert, the Bubba Bash.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so, and actually, I popped up one of these photos that we took in front of the theater in Pennsylvania from Bubba Bash, and you have the Neil Peart signature T-shirt there on that picture, right?
So, see, without Neil and Rush, I would have nothing to drink and nothing to wear. So,
exactly,
totally just the music. But anyway, their music inspired me for, since I was probably 14 years old or something. I don't remember exactly how old I was when I got 2112, my first Rush album. And today we went out to lunch with my grandson, who turns 15 today. And being the coolest grandpa ever, I got him a stack of the best, most essential classic rock, prog rock albums, because he's got a CD player, and we will have him play. And of course, Moving Pictures by Rush was in there.
Yeah.
As was Styx, The Grand Illusion, Kansas Leftoverture, Out of the Blue by ELO, Boston, the first album, Alan Parsons Project, Eye in the Sky. Let's see, Eagles Hotel California. These were like my essentials. And I'm just thinking, man, my parents listened to country and western music, so they would never, ever, ever have gotten anything like that. So
what a cool grandfather to get such a, I mean, what a great starter kit when you think about all of these incredible bits of music. Now, Kevin, Grace Under Pressure has a very special connection between the two of us, because you were working on that when you wrote your first novel. While you were working on your first novel release, I should say, that was actually published, and that was my first Rush album.
So Grace Under Pressure, I had been listening to Rush for a very long time, and my first novel called Resurrection Inc. So I'm writing this kind of a science fiction murder mystery horror novel, and it's all about like high-tech zombies, and one of the resurrected servants starts getting flashbacks of his memory, and he finds out that he's working for the guy who killed him, and kind of an intricate, interesting thing. And as I was plotting that story, Rush came out with this new album, which is Grace Under Pressure, and it's a very dystopian science fiction album that has all these songs: Distant Early Warning, The Body Electric, The Enemy Within, The Red Sector A. All these songs were like the soundtrack for this album I was writing, or the novel I was writing. And I went, well, I can kind of sneak in Easter eggs from these lyrics. And once I really got it into my head that my novel and the Rush album were like creatively connected in my head, I went out of my way to make sure that every song on that album had some little place in the book. And yeah, that's what Rush music and prog rock music has inspired me for such a long time. And then I put in the acknowledgments when the book was published. I acknowledged the three guys from Rush. The Canadians may have heard of Rush. I'm not sure if they're kind of an obscure band, but
obscure. Yeah, a couple of us have heard of the band. They might go somewhere one day, right?
So Neil got I mailed off copies of the book to the record label, but it's like sending it to the warehouse of the Ark of the Covenant. You just never expect anything's going to go anywhere. But Neil got it, and he read it, and he wrote me a fan letter and asked if I wanted to continue corresponding with him. So that was 31 years of friendship before he passed away. So anyway, long impact on my life. I've known Neil even more years than I know you, Mark. So
yeah, that is true. I mean, we didn't meet until 2009, I think. Back in the day, after I had read a bunch of your stuff and didn't realize, like, who's this guy who wrote this story, Drum Beats with Neil? so that was it was great when I actually met you. I went, oh my God, you're the guy who co-authored. So we have a comment from Radioactive Road Trippin' R&R. Says, hey y'all, hey. Cheers. Bye. Thanks for joining us in this virtual chat. Feel free to, if you're watching live, feel free to leave a note from where you're watching from. I am in Waterloo, Ontario, and Kevin, you're in...
I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So
excellent. So you mentioned Alan Parsons Project, and you're kind of like a Kevin J. Parson or something like that in this. Like, let's talk about it. So you've been a fan of progressive rock music your entire life, right? Ever since you discovered that Rush album.
Well, I joined the Columbia Record Club when I was like 14, I think, and that, for anybody who remembers those, you got to pick some 12 albums for $1 or 15 or something like that if you signed up. And I didn't know most of the albums there, but I picked all the ones that looked kind of science fiction-y because I was this nerdy kid with thick glasses and a bad haircut, so I wasn't going to get girlfriends. So, romance songs didn't mean anything to me, but like 2112 did, and Come Sail Away by Styx was like, oh, that was great, and Carry On Wayward Son, and I just went, well, these are the albums I want to listen to. And, since I was in high school, I, kind of aspiring writer, I would listen to those songs, and I wanted, the famous song by Styx, Come Sail Away, this sailing ship sea captain, and then a UFO comes out in the ocean. I always wanted to do a story of that. I mean, that seemed kind of like a cool story. And the Kansas album, Point of No Return, with the cover where the sailing ship is kind of going over the edge of the earth, and there's a bunch of sea serpents all around it. And the song Point of No Return is about a guy whose brother goes off to the sail on the sailing ships, and everybody says, don't go because you'll sail off the edge of the world. And he goes, and the ship sinks, and his brother. And I did write that as a short story, and it's always inspired me. And so that's the connection with the music and the novels.
Is which one of your short story collection books that I have beautiful signed hardcover editions here? Which one is that in?
Fantasy Stories Volume 2. It's called Sea Wind.
Oh, there we go. Look at this gorgeous
Stories Volume 2. It's called Sea Wind, and it is that story where the I don't know if you people know that song. It was kind of a big hit when it came out, about the brother wants to sign up and go sail and see the world, and his mother says, don't go, you'll die. His father says, don't go, we can't do without you. And the brother's missing him, and the ship sails off, and the brother who stays behind has this dream of a huge storm coming and sea monsters coming up, and he's just sure that something happened to his brother's ship. And then some weeks later, like, some wreckage washes up on the shore that the brother finds, and he sees that it's the same, I can't remember, it's a part of the rail that he recognizes or something. So that was from that song, Kansas Point of No Return. But to kind of connect with one of the big things I've got going on right now, that Kansas album just really stuck with me. Just the sailing ships and the sailing off the edge of the world and
Right.
sea monsters. And there was also this really cool myth of Prester John that I started learning about. That the European kings, when the Moors invaded Europe through Spain, that was like started in the 800s or something, and then went on for centuries after that, and kind of led into the Crusades and all this. That they had a legend that there was some other continent yet undiscovered that's beyond the horizon, but that was ruled by this kind of a demigod guy named Prester John, who had the Holy Grail, and he had a fountain of youth, and myths about his kingdom were all kind of cool things. And that's one of the reasons why the Age of Discovery happened. All those sailing ships went out by Prince Henry the Navigator and all these others to go. Yes, they were looking for trade routes and things too, but they were kind of looking for the land of Prester John so that they could recruit him as an ally to come back and fight in these wars to drive the Moors back into Africa. So I use that as the basis for a big epic fantasy trilogy called Terra Incognita, in which it's fantasy world, but it's kind of like fantasy Christian Europe and fantasy Muslim Arabia, and they are at war. It's a big kind of a Crusades like war, and both sides have this Prester John myth that if they can just go sail around the world and find this country where it's not Prester John but a different name, where Prester John is, like, surely God will fight on our side. But they both believe the same thing. So they're both sailing. One goes west and one goes east, and they're looking for this land. And it's a fantasy trilogy. So I can really do sea serpents and the kraken and the leviathan and sea witches and all kinds of fun stuff. Just look at that picture sums up the whole thing. Ray Harryhausen, sea serpents. And I wrote this whole trilogy. It took me years and years and years to research it. And I went on a cruise around the Mediterranean so that I could see a bunch of the sites of the Crusades. And we were in Australia and New Zealand, and I went to the Shipwreck Coast. And in Perth, Australia, there's this amazing, huge shipwreck museum, or a nautical museum. And I spent like all day long there just drinking in and doing research on it. And we just did all kinds of research and plotting, and it took me years and years and years to write this. And I sold it. It was the big work that I did after my Saga of Seven Sons, which is perhaps my best, most famous solo series. And so we published it with the same publisher, this big epic fantasy. And it only came out in paperback, and I'm kind of disappointed because this is my big thing. I wanted to do it. But to make it really special, because of this connection with music that I had always wanted to do an album and a novel together, because like Rush 2112 should have been a novel, and like Grace Under Pressure turned into my novel Resurrection Inc. I wanted to do a novel and a album together. Well, the opportunity came around right about then for me. I think this was in 2010 or so. That's when Neil asked me to write the Clockwork Angels novel. So I got to write the novel based on the Rush album. So that was exactly what I wanted, a novel and an album. But my novel came after the Rush album. I wanted to do a novel and the CD at the same time, so that
Right.
the songs and the novel were being done together. And through my connections with musician friends and people in the industry, a good friend of mine was Sean Gordon, and he owned the label Prog Rock Records, and they did exactly the kind of music that I like, prog rock music. And I pitched him this idea. I said, well, I would love to do this novel and a album together. And he really loved the idea. He said, well, let me look into it. So he started to find like all these musicians, and we decided we were going to do a Terra Incognita album with the first Terra Incognita novel. And we went out, and we ended up doing the first two CDs, two CDs with the first two books in the fantasy trilogy. And he got the lead singer from Kansas, Steve Walsh, the guy who sang the Point of No Return album that inspired the whole thing.
Wow.
He got James Labrie from Dream Theater. He got Michael Sadler from Saga. He got John Payne from Asia. He got the violinist from Kansas. He got Eric Norlander, the keyboardist that I had listened to a lot, Lana Lane, his wife, the female vocalist, and we got Sass Jordan, another Canadian singer. Sass Jordan, she sings female lead on the second album. And this was like the coolest thing ever. I now have a soundtrack to my fantasy novels. But the publisher didn't quite understand why you would have an album with the book. They didn't understand how to connect them. They had also turned down the Clockwork Angels novel, which turned out to be one of my biggest selling books ever.
Yeah.
But they didn't understand, well, do Rush fans even read, and how do you do a novel based on an album? And they just didn't get it. And so these albums came out from Prog Rock Records, which was a relatively small label, and they were connected with these books that the publisher only brought out in paperback, and they refused to do any publicity with the music. They never even put it in like their press releases that, guys, there's the guy from Carry On Wayward Son is singing on this album for the Terra Incognita project. And so it was a huge amount of work, and we never ended up doing the third CD because they're a lot of work, but they're also expensive to make, and a lot of talent brought in. And so that the trilogy came out, I'm very, very proud of those books, but they didn't get the spotlight that I thought they should have had. And then I went on to do 2 more Clockwork books, and then I did a bunch of Dune books. And it's not like I was sitting under a bridge and not with anything to do, but it was kind of disappointing for the way that turned out. And so I need a drink after telling that story. But years went by, and the whole publishing world changed. And suddenly I have the capability that I can publish my own books. You were just showing those short story collections. I did 7 volumes of my collected short stories. And that is another thing that no New York publisher would ever do. They wouldn't ever publish 7 volumes in hardcover of short story reprints. And that was like my best Kickstarter ever. So I ran it and did it myself. And those are ones that we designed, and they came out, they did extremely well. And I've done other Kickstarters. My Dan Shamble Zombie PI series was another one that the traditional publisher had, and it kind of fizzled. And so I got the rights back and I resurrected them, and then I reprinted them. You got those. Those are the last 2 I just did with the Kickstarter. And so for years I thought, I really want to do Terra Incognita the way I had it in my head. I wanted to publish the books in hardcover. Well, not only in hardcover, I wanted to do fancy leatherette, slip-cased, embossed, end papers, sprayed edges, all the real pretty stuff. Because, again, I consider this my fantasy masterpiece. I worked so hard on it, so big. And it took me more than 2 years, but I finally got the rights back from the publisher. And so Prog Rock Records, the record label is out of business, but I'm still friends with Sean Gordon, the guy who owned it. Yeah. And so I worked with him and got the rights back to the CDs. And in the meantime, another friend of mine, Bob Madsen, who has a group called the Grafenberg Disciples, and he has a record label that he's working with called the Highlander Company Records. Well, the reason I got to know him is because after Neil passed away, he and his group did this phenomenal tribute song called No Words for Neil. And it's go on YouTube and Google No Words Neil Peart, and you'll find it. And that just really moved me. It made me cry. I thought it was such a great song. And so I got in touch with him, and we became friends over the past few years. And he came out to Colorado. He's on a motorcycle. He did a road trip from California to Colorado, and we went hiking together. And he was starting to feel around like, Kevin, I'd like to do the third Terra Incognita CD. Have you ever thought about doing the third one? I said, well, yeah, I thought about it a lot, but there's no point. I didn't have the rights back to the books, and the other 2 CDs were out of print. And what are you going to do? I released just a random album. And so I kind of put him off, and he went home, and then like this miracle occurred. So I just, out of the blue, I got a letter from the old publisher saying, here, we're reverting all the rights to your books. And then it was game on. I was like, all right, I got the books back. I can do them right. Then we've got, and I started getting the CDs, the first 2 CDs back. And I got huge project. This is something I've been building the Kickstarter for, I mean, more than a year, just putting all these things together. So getting the leather bound slipcase design thing, getting all the just the brand new hardcovers, because I didn't think the old cover art was quite as good. So we look at those paintings. I mean, I had the art, but the design wasn't quite right. So I had my designer do those. They look gorgeous. And we're doing the 3rd CD. So those are the 3 CDs on the bottom. That the brand new one called Uncharted Shores. And we got, oh man, just putting this stuff together. So we got Michael Sadler from Saga to come back. He's on all 3 of the CDs. We got Annika von Giersbergen, who's this terrific European female vocalist that I've loved for a long time. Her group was called The Gathering, and she's done a lot of solo work. We got Ted Leonard, the guy, vocalist for Spock's Beard. He sings on ours. Dan Reed from the Dan Reed Network. If anybody listened to funk rock back in the mid 90s, he's been a mine for quite a while, and Bob's. And we just said, hey, you want to sing on this? And let's see, we got the violinist from the Bubba Bash and the Clockwork Angels string section, Jonathan Dinklage, who makes us cry every single year at the Bubba Bash.
He does.
Weeping tears for him because his violin is so amazing, and he also tours with Barbra Streisand and Lady Gaga. We got Ed Toth, the drummer from the Doobie Brothers, and we got Greg Bissonette, the drummer for the David Lee Roth Band, and for Ringo Starr. When Ringo Starr was on tour, he's the drummer that goes with them. And I haven't verified this, but I saw somewhere that he was also the drummer on Spinal Tap. So that's probably pretty cool thing. And we got Don Perry, the drummer from Jethro Tull. I know a lot of drummers.
Well,
apparently.
You're good friends with Don as well, right?
Don Perry's one of my very, very best friends. And we got him to do a kind of a spoken soliloquy voice of God thing at the.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's terrific on it. But that was kind of a story there. That was the last piece of the album that we needed, Don's recording of this thing. And he had all the stuff he needed, but we really needed this last piece before we could master all the CD. And that was right when the LA fires broke out. And his house was up in the hills, and it was 100 feet from the evacuation zone.
Wow.
And his power kept going in and out, his internet kept going in and out. But he recorded this piece, as he said. I called him and I said, "Don't get out of there. You don't need to worry about recording this. I don't need it. Just go away." And he said, no, if this had to be the last thing he recorded in his studio, it was going to be the last thing he recorded in his studio. So he recorded it and sent it to us, and his house escaped, thank goodness. And so that's kind of a little anecdote on that. And we put all these together, and so the whole upshot is we've had a Kickstarter running for the last 5 days.
Yeah.
So if you go to Kickstarter.com and just type in Terra Incognita or Kevin J. Anderson, you'll find it. But that is for brand new hardcovers of the novels. We've got all 3 CDs. We've got the deluxe leather-bound set. We've got unabridged audiobooks read by Scott Brick, who is my narrator for all the Dune books, plus a bunch of other things. So that's over 60 hours of audiobooks, and all that put together. But we had like all the lyrics to the songs on 3 CDs, which kind of tell the story arcs that go through this. And I had written an original Terra Incognita short story that I had put up as like an ebook, kind of a promo thing. But it had never been published anywhere except that I put it into one of those fantasy collections that you were just showing. Right. But it really belongs as part of Terra Incognita. So I'm doing a companion volume that has the mythical creature short story and all the lyrics to all 3 CDs, and this big lengthy kind of an article about how I researched it and spent 15 years working on it and how the albums came to be. And so that'll be kind of a neat little Silmarillion type book that goes with the trilogy. And
Oh, that is
so
fantastic.
it's a really cool thing, and the Kickstarter's doing quite well. We funded in 14 minutes, so it's going well. You know, you just sort of make up a number for what you want to fund it at, but it's going quite well. But you know, we're kind of to the point that after the big rush, then it kind of slows down for quite a while.
Yeah.
There'll be a little surge. But if anybody's like collectors or something, if you want those leather bound slipcase things, I'm only signing and numbering the first 500 of them. And so if you want a lowish number, you should jump on and try to grab them. So just look at those. I've never done anything that fancy before.
Yeah, they look incredible. Like I jumped, I was all over that like a cheap suit. I jumped on these immediately. And so this is the 16th of March, and the Kickstarter is running until when?
Until April 3rd.
Okay, so time is the tick-tock. Time is countdown, and you may not get a chance to get one of those special signed editions.
I think it's 17 days left. But the other thing about the Kickstarter, and this goes for all Kickstarters, the backers of the Kickstarter will get the books and they'll get the CDs. And in fact, we just hit a stretch goal. And so everybody who backed got the first song from the new CD that nobody has ever heard before. So that.
Oh, wow.
You got it, Mark, didn't you? If you backed it, you should have gotten an update that said, here's your free song.
Oh my God, so I've been so busy this weekend. Did it actually come in? I haven't even listened to it yet.
So look at your backer update, and it will show you.
Wow! See, there's special surprises just waiting for me. I didn't even realize. Like
this is
surprises.
Michael Sadler. This is the opening track to the album. It's one of my favorite pieces on it. And but I guess the point I was trying to make is, if you back the Kickstarter, you get your books or your CDs or whatever. You get them soon. If you don't back the Kickstarter, we're going to bring them out to the general public probably in October or something like that.
Right.
So if you kind of join the sneak preview club or the backstage club or something like that, you get it. And frankly, it cost me a lot of money to make these CDs, to make the run editions and stuff. So, but again, this is my passion project. This is the trilogy that. Oh, and here's a selling point for fantasy readers. The trilogy's all done, and you get to have all 3 books as soon as we print them. So
wait, you don't have to wait 10 years for the next book?
Have to wait. No, they're already done. They're already done.
Look at you bucking the trend. All right, Kevin, we have people watching from all over the world. So Amy is watching this from East Coast Australia, where it is already Monday morning.
Well, good morning, Amy. I've been to Brisbane. I've been to Sydney, so I don't know which one of those, or if you're at either one of those, but love it over there. I've been, I think, 3 times. Just adored Australia.
Awesome.
And in fact, I went down to the Shipwreck Coast by Melbourne, which is where I did a lot of research for this book.
That is so cool. Rush Guy 2112 is watching from my hometown, Levack, Ontario. I suspect this might be Pete, the guy who put the album Grace Under Pressure in my hands and said, "You got to listen to this." Thank you, Pete, for that.
Well, thank you, Pete, because without that, Mark and I wouldn't have nearly as much connection here. So,
Guy Anthony DeMarco says, "Nice to see you both." Good to see you, sir. Let's see. We have where else are people watching from? We have Roland is watching from Southern California, drinking an open brew lager from Colorado in your honor. That is, I love that. I love having a beer with us. Cheers.
Thank you. Well, in fact, here's another interesting fun fact. So when we released the very first Terra Incognita album, Sean Gordon and Prog Rock Records were stationed around or living around San Diego. And so we had a CD release party with a whole bunch of the vocalists at the Stone Brewing Complex near San Diego. And we had a launch party there, and Michael Sadler was there, and we played some of the tracks and even sang a little bit. So there is
that would have been amazing.
Southern California breweries.
Wow, that is fantastic. So there's a few folks not too far from here. I've got Dan McQuain, who's watching from neighboring city, Cambridge, Ontario, really close to Waterloo. Hey, Dan, how's it going? And Sandy Suckless from Erin, Ontario, a little bit further away, but still within my neck of the woods as well. So that is so cool. We've got Radioactive Road Tripper says, Natasha says, I can't wait for the audiobooks as well. I'm looking forward to that as well because I'm a slow reader. So I'm so excited that I'm going to be able to get the audiobooks, so then I can listen to the audiobooks, then I can toggle over, listen to the music. That's just going to be so much fun.
Also, let me just, so these are like 60 hours, all three of them together. They're like 20 hours a piece that they're doing. Scott Brick is going to be narrating the Mythical Creatures short story. They added the new short story.
Okay.
So you'll get the bonus audiobook. I think we're going to tack it on to the end of one of the other ones. But the good news is that the audiobooks are done. Scott's done with them. We're just kind of cleaning up and mastering the file. So you will get these 60 hours of audiobooks probably May or June. So like way faster than if we had to record them all from starting.
I know I'm just finishing the production of the One Hand Screaming audiobook because I had 5 different narrators. So I have all these different voices doing the short stories. And I was like, whoa, yeah, it's so cool that once the Kickstarter's done, I'll be able to get those audiobooks and start listening. Because I only have, I think the very first book I got from you when I met you and Rebecca Erie at Niagara Falls, Ontario at ErieCon. And this is the paperback edition from Orbit Books of The Edge of the World. Very first signed book I got from you way back in the day.
If you hold that up so they can see the cover of it, and can you throw up the hardcovers, the new ones, because it's the same artwork.
Yeah, but
I like my design better.
Yeah, well, I mean, and they're very stunning. The new ones. I mean, I'm so excited, and I was excited to learn that Sass Jordan had worked on the album because I've long been a huge fan.
Well, and apparently she's a Dune fan too, so we actually still tweet back and forth every once in a while, and she just gave us a little plug for this. And
absolutely. So you've been, I mean, your first novel was published in is it 84? 88. When Grace Under Pressure had just come out the year before, I think, right?
I think so.
And so you've worked with so many different publishers. You still co-authored the Dune books with Brian Herbert. You've done all these different media tie-in books. You've written so many. How many novels? Like
190-ish.
190-ish novels. And
well, it's not a flippant answer, but there are a lot of them that there's an omnibus edition. So does that count as a new one?
Does it count as a new one? I get that. No, I get it. And again, I mean, I haven't written as much. And when people ask me, I was like 35, 38. I don't know. So this, the way you use Kickstarter, I'm always curious about this as a creative person, because there was a time when you could make a living as a traditionally published author, earning money from advances from big publishers, right?
Right.
And is that still the case? Does that happen for?
Not so much for me. I still write for traditional publishers. I just did Nether Station from Blackstone, which came out last,
which was amazing. And I can't wait for the next one. So come on,
it's
finished, right?
It's written and it's finished and it's delivered. I'm supposed to get editorial comments next month.
Okay.
And this is kind of an adjunct, and I won't dwell a whole lot on it, but I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/ this is hard to remember, Kevin J. Anderson. So Patreon, and one of the things that I give my Patreon supporters is they get to read the manuscripts as soon as I'm done with them. And so they got to read the sequel to Nether Station back in, I think, early January. And
that's awesome.
And so one of the other fun things with the Patreon people is I have a whole list of the supporters, and I'm writing this big sequel, and I need random names every once in a while. You know, like I need the name of the UN Secretary General, or I need the name of the communications officer on the bridge, little things. And I think I ended up using 19 names of my Patreon supporters. I just and sadly, most of them don't survive the book, but still they get eaten by monsters or something like that. But I warned them. I said, you might not come to a good end, but that's fine. But
well, that's known as Tuckerization, right?
Yes, Tuckerization. So yes, I still write books for traditional publishers. I do like comics and graphic novels. I know people do indie comics and graphic novels. That's an extra level of effort that I don't really want to get into, because then you're managing and commissioning all the artwork, and that's just extra steps that I don't do. So I do so I do a lot of comics for regular publishers. But the whole aspect of indie publishing has just, in the last 10 years, has just been a sea change. It's like evolution from dinosaurs to mammals. It's just a completely different thing. And I've run my own. Wordfire Press has been 16 years now. And we published over 400 books from 150 some different authors. And we know how to do it. And getting the books designed and getting them published, it's something that we can do. And I took, like, for instance, the Dan Shamble books. I love that series, but they came out from a traditional publisher who, these are fast and fun and funny books. They're like popcorn. You read one quick and you want the next one fairly soon. Your wife reads them and she wants the next one fairly soon.
Exactly.
But the other publisher, I wanted them to come out like 6 months apart. I wrote the first 3 and they're ready to go, but they didn't want to bring them out faster than like every year or year and a half. And I thought, well, that's not how you don't broadcast a TV series 1 episode a year. So they ended up letting the series fizzle out, and I got the rights back. And so I reissued them myself at Wordfire Press. And that was the first Kickstarter that I ran. I wasn't.
What, really? That Dan Shamble was the first Kickstarter?
The first Dan Shamble one, because I'd written the next one. I published it myself, but it didn't have a huge push, and the fan base was there, but it wasn't as big as I wanted to. And I wasn't sure I wanted to write another book in the series. Remember, I was doing Dune novels and Clockwork books and all kinds of other things.
Right.
And instead, as an experiment, I ran a Kickstarter. Said, well, okay, fans, if you want a new Dan Shamble novel, then put your money where your mouth is. And it blew me away. It raised like 3 times what the trad publisher was paying me. And so I went, oh, okay, I like this. And the thing that I like best is it's directly connecting with your fans. It's not in traditional publishing. It's me, the author, who sends stuff to my agent, who sends the stuff to the editor, who sends the stuff to the marketing department, that goes to the publisher, who then sends it to their sales reps. Then they go to the bookstores, who then sell the books to the customers.
Right.
Well, at Kickstarter, it's me selling the book to you. There aren't all those other layers involved.
Yeah.
And it just really helps. And for those of you listening who don't know what Kickstarter is or haven't done them, it's basically like pre-ordering a book on Amazon. You just go to the Kickstarter page, say, I want the hardcover set, and we take your order, and I send you the book as soon as it's out. Just like, although Kickstarter charges your card when the Kickstarter campaign ends, because what this was designed for was for creators to actually raise seed money so that they could afford to buy the cover art and print the books.
Right.
I do it a little bit backwards, because I'm going to do these anyway. I'm going to publish them at Wordfire Press no matter what. And so I've already, those Dan Shamble books you showed up a few minutes ago, I had already written them. I had already gotten the cover art. Everything was all done before I ran the Kickstarter. And that meant that as soon as the Kickstarter ended, I was able to put them in production, and people got their, I think the campaign ended in early November, and people got their physical printed books in hand in January.
Yeah.
Which I'm kind of embarrassing other Kickstarter people, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. It usually, once the Kickstarter funds, then they start working on it. But I kind of do. And the Terra Incognita ones, they're all done. I mean, the books are already laid out. The covers are already done. The slip cases are already designed, and all that. So, and in fact, that kind of leads me to something else that we might want to talk about. So because of, I had never done slipcase things or leatherettes or embossing or the sprayed edges, and there are services that can do that. But because of this big writers conference that we run in Colorado Springs called the Superstars Writing Seminar, that Mark is a part of. He's showing you his breast, and he needs to keep that shirt on. But through talking to people there and with connections, one of our sponsors is called the Inkfluence. They actually produce the fancy stuff, and so I worked with Dana Claire there and said, well, can you help me do this, because it's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know how to do this. And so she just worked with me, and you saw those mock-ups. We got everything designed, and we are ready to go to press probably within a few weeks after the Kickstarter ends.
Yeah.
And it's gold embossing, and there's what we didn't show because they hadn't had it picked out yet. There's fancy end papers too that sort of show a spyglass and a compass and an old map. And so at Superstars, which is next year will be year 15, we launched that as a conference that was, we call it the OG Business of Writing Conference. When we started it, it was me and my wife, Rebecca, and David Farland and Eric Flint and Brandon Sanderson, that we got together ourselves and started talking business stuff about, how do you get reviews on something, and how do you make the bestseller list, and how do you, decode all the stuff in traditional publishing. And we just got so much out of it that we realized, well, maybe we should share some of this stuff, because at the time there were no business of writing. There were a lot of craft seminars, but there weren't any business of writing things. And so we did it to focus on contracts and copyright and intellectual property, and how do you interact with agents, and how do you, this is trad days 15 years ago. I mean, how do you break the New York Times bestseller list, and how do you, all these things. And it has evolved and grown fantastically, so that it is a truly huge network of very ambitious writers. It is skewing a lot toward indie writers, although we just had a traditional New York agent. We have traditional New York publishers and editors that are there. But it's like this huge resource. We had the head of publishing at Kickstarter last year as one of our guest speakers, because Kickstarter is just such a vital platform for so many people. And I'm like the Commander Adama of Superstars. So I'm there. Mark, you're the MC. I don't know what other title you have, but Mark's always there. We have other people who are big. Jim Butcher comes every year. I'm really going to try to get Brandon Sanderson back for year 15, because it's an anniversary.
He hasn't. Yeah, I haven't seen Brandon since I think 2018 or something. Yeah. He's
slightly busy.
He's a little busy. Yeah.
Speaking of Kickstarters, Mr. $42 million. But speaking of Kickstarters, but that is, it's just this network of people, and it's all very supportive. And here's the real cool thing about indie writers and indie publishers. They don't believe in things like trade secrets, that when they learn how to do something cool, you can't shut them up. They can't share it fast enough. They want to tell you, oh, look, I just figured out how to do Facebook ads, and here's how I can help you. And I just love that dynamic in that community.
Well, I love that. And Jonathan Maybury's been coming for 6 years now, and it's been such a great collection of people. I mean, I started coming in 2012. You haven't been able to get rid of me, so he's like, might as well put Mark to work, since he's going to be here the whole time. And I can't reveal this, but I was helping a tribe member from Superstars, because it's indie publishing, and you get to meet agents and editors and people from the publishing world too. So it's got the best of both worlds. But I just helped review a contract from somebody who met the person who offered them the contract. The publisher that offered them a contract met them at Superstars. I don't think I can share who it is yet, but you've got these success stories of authors. Even Katie Cross. I remember Katie Cross as an author who was coming to Superstars, and I remember interacting with her in the early days. And Dana and Katie met at Superstars last year, and I've got 2 gorgeous books that Dana had done. So I know the quality of those books that she's
Katie was killing it with those special fancy editions. That is now her special thing, and so that really works amazingly. So Superstars is a great connection. I'm also running this graduate program in publishing. I teach a master's degree program in publishing at Western Colorado University. And that's what Mark got one of the less garish Hawaiian shirts from West End. But I am taking applicants for the for year 7 now, our 7th group. And I brought Mark in as a guest instructor, and he liked it so much he came back and got his own degree for the same program. And
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I saw what was going on, and I've worked in the book industry since 1992, and I've been teaching writers about stuff. But when I was there, and yeah, okay, I was there giving lectures because I was the guest lecturer for the week. But I got to witness what was going on in the classes that you were teaching, and I kept thinking, why wasn't there something like this? Because I got a degree in English. Why wasn't there
yes,
something like this? And I was like, I don't need permission. I mean, I did. I had to talk to my wife about it, but it's like this is good. And I just wanting to do that course, and it was such a great experience. And it's not just because you take the students out to the mountains and we go on a wonderful hike the day before it all starts, but what a wonderful class. And my classmates, the cohort I was in, as well as the year ahead of us and the year behind us, are such great people that I'm constantly in contact with and messaging and communicating with. We're there, supporting one another. It's just an amazing program.
so we are open for application. It starts this July. It is all online except for 1 week in Colorado in July. So you
Right,
saw that
right.
picture. Darn, being in the Colorado mountains in July. How bad is that? But so it's you go 1 week when you start. The program lasts for a year, and it's all online. And then you come for one more week as you end it and release your books. And everybody works together as a team to edit a professional anthology. So they read the slush piles. We get this great financing every year from Draft to Digital. That's the anthology that Mark put together with his group. We're open for submissions. We pay professional rates. We get hundreds and hundreds of submissions, and they get to go through and read the slush pile and pick the stories they want. They work with the authors. They edit the stories. They design the cover. They work it all. And then their solo project, they find a classic of literature that they produce a fine and fancy new edition of it. And that one is Mark. He did a Henry David Thoreau book, and this is all hands-on. They do this
Yeah.
themselves. From acquiring the text to proofreading it, and they lay out the book themselves. They write the cover copy. They get somebody to write a forward. You had Joanna Penn write your forward.
Yeah, Joe was I love the fact that she wrote the forward for me, so that was quite amazing.
Well, and then the books all come out in this big release party at their graduation week in Colorado. So it's fun. And in fact, if you go to wordfire.com, which is where my website is, there's a whole section on the master's program. So you can, or just kind of Google Western Colorado University Publishing, and you'll
Right.
find it.
Awesome.
Oh, and we can't use that's the way you want to put it in. If you type www, it directs you off into the universe somewhere. We're trying.
So you want wordfire.com, right?
Not www.wordfire.
No, just
We'll get it fixed.
wordfire.com.
The thing is, never mind. We had another page that took over.
Oh, the interwebs.
So that's fun. And I have one more quick announcement to go back to the music and novels.
Yeah.
This is just a teaser announcement. I can't do a whole lot with it, but one of my favorite groups for 20 years is Coheed and Cambria. They're a kind of a great prog rock band, and I've listened to all their albums. Their biggest hit is a song called Welcome Home, and I heard it in 2005. It was on the radio. I was driving home, and they played this song, and I went, "What is this song? I love it!" And I stayed in the car until the song finished, so the announcer could say this was Coheed and Cambria. So I walked in the house and I looked them up on Amazon, and I ordered that album right then and there, and I bought every one of their albums since. Well, they have contacted me, and I will be working on a graphic novel and novel project with Coheed and Cambria. So can't tell any more than that, but that will be something.
Awesome.
I'm just nerding out, because this is when they contacted me, I went, "Man, I love your stuff." And they were like, "Really? You heard of us?" And, well, 6 of their 10 albums have been in the Billboard top 10 selling albums, so they're not like obscure, right? And they just had a brand new album drop yesterday called The Father of Make Believe, and it is an amazing album. And that's a great place to start if you want to listen to any of their stuff.
I think you texted that to me and said, you've got to listen to this.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So we've got, and I missed someone, Prince Gora was watching from the UK. Hey. And also Prince says,
Keep on listening all the time. Yep.
those leather editions are beautiful. I'm still hoping Kevin gets rights back to Saga of Seven Sons. So they can get...
Prince Goro, I have been working on that for 2 years too, and I'm still waiting for that miraculous letter to show up. And we're trying. They just don't. It is a thing with traditional publishing. Some publishers are like I did a sequel trilogy to Seven Sons called The Saga of Shadows, and that was published by Tor. And I really have been hoping that I can do this big project with all 7 of the Seven Sons books, and there are 2 intermediary books plus that trilogy. I've been really hoping for that, and I've had the wheels in motion for 2 years saying, guys, these books are kind of out of print and I really want them back. All I had to do was mention it to Tor. I said, hey, would you be willing to give me the rights back? And they said, sure, sent me a letter right like that.
Wow.
But the other publisher has been 2.5 years, and they're just, oh, well, we're looking into it and we'll bring it up. And well, I'm busy this year with Terra Incognita anyway. So
you're a little busy, yeah.
I am hoping we get to do Seven Sons.
Hopefully, fingers crossed there. We have 8 minutes left. So if any of you folks are watching live, if you have any questions for Kevin, please feel free to just drop that in the comments so we can answer that. Give Kevin a chance to take another sip of his beer. You said this is the Elephant, the IPA from...
This is the Elephant Rock IPA from Pikes Peak.
Oh, that is, yeah, very delicious beer. And as you know, this is the Rush 50 from Henderson. It's a version of their beautiful, delicious golden ale. Again, limited edition. I think I brought you some last time.
I have. It's a little bit out of reach, but I have them on display in my shelves here. I've got all the Rush beers that you have brought me one at a time.
And you're going to be in Toronto. You're coming to Toronto. So Liz and I were in Toronto on Friday night to see Eliza Schlesinger, and she was doing a comedy show at Massey Hall. And when I was getting us drinks before the concert, up on the screen, it was showing forthcoming events. And there's Rush Fest, and you can see all the guests of honor, including Kevin J. Anderson, are going to be there. August 1st, is that?
I think so.
Something like that, yeah. So
yeah, and there's going to be Hugh Syme, who does all the album covers for Rush, and he did the Clockwork Angels covers. And Terry Brown was the producer of their first several albums. I think.
Wow. It's gonna be a really, and I get to pick you up at the airport and take you to some beer places, take you to Henderson Brewing, take you to the Rush Fest.
Yes, he says in his Kathy Bates voice that he's my biggest fan.
Yes. I have not yet hobbled you, so
well, let's not. I hobbled myself last year when I broke my ankle when I was hiking, so I don't want to do that again. So
no, that was enough. The 1 foot was enough, I think. Yeah. So you're back to hiking and dictating in the mountains.
Yep, my ankle's all healed up. I've gone hiking quite a few times, and I've got some stuff out. And back to it. I lost several months with the broken ankle, and they don't like you hiking with a broken ankle for some reason. So I had to.
Question from the audience. So what new books are you both working on? So it's kind of like, this is a tough one to ask, because if you ask Kevin this, he's going to have 4 different books, right?
Yeah, but I can't. So I've got several big announcements, but because it takes them a year longer to do the contracts than it takes me to write the book, I've had a really, really big graphic novel from a very famous superhero character that I literally started writing 3 years ago and finished writing it 3 years ago, June. So 2 3/4 years. And they won't let me announce it yet until they get all the art done and put it up for pre-order. I'm like, well, but I like just telling the buzz and keeping going. So I've got that. I've got some other big graphic novels. I'm glad I could give you that one teaser about the Coheed and Cambria thing, because that that took a long time for me to say, but can I just say we're working on something?
Nope.
And they did. They finally let me do that. The sequel to Nether Station, which I told you that's written, and I'll be getting editing back, so I'm going to have to do a revisions on that. But this Terra Incognita Kickstarter is kind of taking all my attention at the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've only got one traditional book sign deal for Ghosts of the Great Lakes, which I'm working on this summer, and I'm delivering at the end of the year, so I can it's coming out next year. So a few quick questions as well. So Dan asks, any hints on how to set goals for Kickstarter? So what are some tips for that?
Well, and I know the head of publishing there very well, and we kind of talk frankly, and what she says is there are people that kind of obsess over this, that they set a really low goal so they can say funded in 5 seconds or something like that.
Right.
That doesn't really help. It gives you bragging rights, but it doesn't really help as much. I think you need to figure out what your costs are. Like this. So for those fancy leatherette slipcased editions that I've got, I have a minimum. I have to print at least 200 of those. That's the minimum number. And of course, I'm hoping to do the whole 500 and stuff. But just to design and print those, it's like over $17,000. So I have to make $17,000 before I even pay for that. And I don't make any money if it stops at $17,000.
Yeah.
What has happened is people don't charge enough, and then they barely fund, and then they end up paying more money out of pocket because they have to deliver the stuff that costs more than they
happened
expect.
to me on my first Kickstarter. I was about $2,000 in the hole on that one.
Yeah, these are meant to make money, not to lose money. So it's another thing is, and this has been kind of my crusade when I talk. It is those 3 magic words. It is shipping and handling. If it costs $5 to mail the book, don't charge them $5 because the padded envelope costs $1. The tape costs money. The mailing label costs money, and it costs you time. Or if you have, I usually have kind of a Kickstarter party. I bring people over and we do, because I'm mailing out hundreds of them at a time.
Yeah,
and I pay those people to come over, and so you've got to pay those. I got to buy them pizza for lunch, and if you start adding that up, it's easy to just go, well, I'm not going to count the $80 I spent on pizzas for everybody. Well, that's $80 that goes into the costs. And we had to buy like 3 of those big cases of just tape rolls that you seal envelopes with and you build the boxes with. And it's so don't underestimate these invisible expenses that go into it. Because I kind of made that mistake going, oh, well, shipping's $5 and we'll charge them $6. Well, actually, that's not enough. And I'm not trying to, people always have this shipping and handling. Why are they tacking on $3 extra? They're ripping me off. Well, no, it actually does cost things to do all that. And the other important thing is give yourself enough time, because it never comes as fast as you think it's going to. And whether printing takes longer, or I'll have a layout person, or I'll have a cover designer that might they got sick that week, so I was counting on it that week, and it turns out to be a week later. Well, then that throws everything else off by the week. Hope that's helpful. So if you're setting a goal, look, if I'm for those Dan Shamble novels, so I'll run a Kickstarter to say, okay, I'm going to write a brand new Dan Shamble novel, and here's the artwork, and let's raise money for it. And people basically pre-order the book. So if it's like $30 for the hardcover, they pay the $30 and I get the $30. Well, that hardcover costs, I think, $10 or $12 to print. Plus I have to pay hundreds of dollars to get that cover painting and the art, the cover design and everything. But this is how I make my living. I can't do this to break even. I actually have to make money above and beyond that so that I can, pay bonbons for my wife and, all the fancy stuff that she needs.
Buy CDs for your grandson for his birthday.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the idea for a Kickstarter should not be, I'm just going to cover my costs. I obviously spent time. So if I write a novel, I kind of want to get as much money as I would get paid to write a novel. But that way I don't have to worry about another publisher or somebody. And again, the Terra Incognita stuff, I told you how expensive those leather bound things were. And producing a new rock album is not free. We've got to pay these big people, and getting all the cover design. And, you save costs where you can't. I laid it out myself using vellum, and I did everything because I'm kind of a control freak. I wanted it to look exactly the way I wanted it to. But, there's a lot of time invested in it. And I'm not trying to talk people out of it. I'm just trying to make sure that they're aware that there's a lot of work and there's a lot of other costs. But I'm so excited because it lets you do the projects you want to do. Like those short story collections, I would never have been able to do them without Kickstarter. Nobody would have published it in the traditional New York publishers. And that was a lot of work, just gathering 160 short stories or however many there were. And the real pain in the butt was coming up with all those copyright pages at the end. Like, okay, exactly what year was this published? Exactly what magazine was it published in? And all the, the fine print stuff. But I'm very proud of that set. You obviously showed them off. And
yeah, very proud to own them. Okay, we're going to sneak in, if it's okay, one last question. That's all right. So Sandy says, Kevin, you have a unique writing process, the most unique writing process I've seen. What about hiking and dictating allows you to free creative and get your stories out? So you were showing, what was that you were showing us? Oh, you're muted. I don't know what happened. Did you hit a button? Hit something on your mic?
There
you are.
So I'm, you know what? This was plugged into the charger of my computer, and I think when I lifted it up, anyway, whatever this is my Olympus digital recorder that I'll go out walking and hiking. And in fact, your background image is showing an arch in Moab, Utah. And I have actually hiked out to that arch. I looked at it and went, I know what that one is. But I take my notes. I'm a plotter, so I outline the books, and I take my notes for the next couple of chapters, and I'll go out for a walk every day. So whether it's just a local around the bike path or climbing up into the mountains and hiking, and I just tell myself a story. I've got to the point where I dictate it instead of type it. In fact, it's much harder for me to sit at a keyboard and type stuff instead of going out and stretching my legs. Of course, the problem is if you break your ankle, that really screws up your writing process. But that was a mess for me for a couple of months because I had a book deadline and I couldn't go out and do the way I wanted it to.
So how did you I think you mentioned once that you were sitting, because you live in a beautiful area, you were sitting on the back deck looking at the beautiful mountains.
Right. But part of the process is the actual movement and walking around, and sitting there made it hard. But I got it done. I mean, it just wasn't the way I wanted it to be.
Of course, because one of the professional things of professionalism is when you have a contract, when you have a commitment, you get it done, right?
And this was for the sequel to Nether Station, so it was a trad publisher, and I really did have a deadline, and they really did have what they needed. But I go out and do that, and in fact, I have a book called On Being a Dictator. You can find it on Amazon. Just type in on my name and On Being a Dictator. And I co-wrote it with Martin Shoemaker and Greg Bose, who are also dictators. And that goes, if you want to just, it's $5 on Amazon or something. That lays out our whole technique and the process and ways you can get trained in it. And one of the things that I really get impatient with is people come up to me, they go, oh yeah, I tried dictating for like 45 seconds and it didn't work for me, so I went back. And I'm like, it's a learned process, just the way typing is a learned process. You didn't type 100 words a minute the first time you sat at a keyboard. So it's dictation is becoming way more popular now because they dictate into their phones, and I can't remember the last time I actually typed out a text. I always just hit the button and speak it. And so I dictated to the digital recorder and I downloaded. I have an AI transcription service that transcribes word for word what I said. That's the thing about AI. I had to really train it to stop writing my damn sentences for me. Like, no, type it the way I said it. And once that's trained, then it just transcribes it. It's a very, very mechanical process. Anne-Marie, you will do it. I know you're going to do it. You're sitting in bed right now, and you can just dictate. Figure it out. I'll help you. And in fact, one of the things in the On Being a Dictator book, I talk about, just use it as a brainstorming tool, because I get more creative when I'm out walking, and I just like to walk around and let my thoughts wander, and especially when I'm world building or like doing my character backgrounds. Okay, I've got King Mark, and King Mark had a puppy when he was a boy, but the puppy got rabies because it was bit by a squirrel and it attacked the rest of the. You just make up this stuff. And if I was just walking and thinking of these things, I would forget most of it by the time I came home. And this way you just put it in your digital recorder so you can keep track of it. And, it speeds me up because I can really just get into the zone, especially if I'm in like this big battle scene or something. I can just get into the zone and just go. So, Anne-Marie, you'll do it. I know you will.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you for the virtual beer. Thanks for hanging out with me and sharing some epic adventures as well. Where can people find you online?
Wordfire.com, you put up there.
Okay.
And, right now, the most important thing I would say is just check out the Kickstarters. Look at all the pretty stuff that we've got there. And even if you don't buy anything, look at how cool a campaign is, because there's so much stuff there, and maybe it'll inspire you to do your own Kickstarter.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thanks. I guess we get to have beers in LA in a few weeks, but we're having this one now. I want to thank you for joining me, and we'll thank everyone for watching live from all corners of the globe. Cheers to everyone.
Come sail away to the edge of the world or whatever. So thanks, everybody.
Take care.